Okay, if you recall last week we talked about simplifying radicals. So, for example, if I had something like the square root of 40, I would see if it could be simplified by looking to see if it had a perfect square factor. And of course 40 is the square root of 4 times the square root of 10. I'm using my multiplication rule there. And the square root of 4 can be simplified, so the simple way to write this is 2 square roots of 10. So when you're multiplying radicals and use your multiplication rule, you're going to do a problem like this. Let's say I did the square root of 3 times the square root of 15. When I look at 3 and 15, neither of those have perfect square factors. But when I multiply them together, I get the square root of 45. If you think about the factors of 45, you may see that this is the square root of 9 times the square root of 5. Okay, and 9 is a perfect square, so the square root of 9 is 3 square root of 5. So when I'm using my multiplication rule, I always need to look at that answer and see if it can be simplified. Alright, so let's look at one more example. Let's look at the square root of 15 times the square root of 35. Now if I multiply 15 and 35, I'm going to get a pretty big number, you might imagine. But I do recognize that both of these have a factor of 5. So I'm going to use my multiplication rule to kind of write this all under 1. But I'm going to say 3 times 5 times 5 times 7. Okay, and then I'm going to use my commutative property to kind of rearrange that and make this into 25, which is 5 times 5, times 21, which is the 3 and the 7, right? So now if I use that, I break it up, I have the square root of 25 times the square root of 21. And the square root of 25 can be simplified to be 5 square roots of 21. So you can use that multiplication rule to even break down really big numbers. Okay, finally, this works with exponents too. So I might have the square root of x to the 7th times the square root of x to the 5th. And I could simplify each of these separately, or I could just use my multiplication rule here and say, well, this is square root of x to the 12th, which is just x to the 6th.